Well, hey, good morning. Welcome. My name is Todd. I'm one of the pastors here. I want to welcome those of you who are brand new today. We have so many new people that come through the doors every single week. And if you're brand new today, I'd love to meet you at the 10-minute party after the service today as well. I want to welcome those of you watching online. If you're live streaming this right now, can we make some noise for our live stream community? We've got people all over the world tuning in. We're so grateful for you, and it's going to be a great morning. Today we're continuing our series, Emojions, talking about the emotions that sometimes rule us in our lives. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about worry. Of course, we all worry about different things in our lives, and I just want to have a moment of transparency with you, a moment of vulnerability with you today as we begin. But can I ask you first, is this a safe place today? Is this a safe place? I can see you, by the way. Is it okay? All right, cool. Is it judgment-free place? All right, cool. So I have this worry. It's a consistent worry in my life. I think about it often, and I worry about aging. Okay, now, just to be clear, just to kind of get this thing going, I've never been a fan of aging. I don't like aging. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't know why we have aging. In fact, I think we should all age like Benjamin Button in reverse. And that's a way better plan. But I have this thing. And so this year, 2016, it's a big year for me. All right, it's a big year for me because I turn 40 years old this year. Don't do that. No. I'm still processing, so please just relax, okay? But it's a thing, okay? So this just happened, okay? Like 2 weeks ago, it's just happened, okay? My daughter and myself and my daughter's friend, this random friend, we're standing in our kitchen area, okay? So my wife and I, we have this picture on our refrigerator, okay? So we love this picture. It's nostalgic. It kind of reminds us of young love, and it's romantic, and we have this hanging on our refrigerator. Now, clearly, as you can see, this is me, that's me, and that's my wife in the picture. I mean, unmistakably, undeniably, 100%, that is us, okay? I mean, clearly, we're younger, okay? It's like 15 years old, all right? That's okay. You can have older pictures of yourself hanging in your house, it's okay. And so, but this friend, my daughter's friend, this random friend, is in my kitchen, and she comes to my refrigerator, and she looks at the picture, and she points at the picture, and says this out loud, "Well, who's that?" And the tone of her voice, I mean, there was such an audacity in her voice, like, why do you have this random picture of this random couple on your refrigerator? And I looked at her, and I looked at the picture, I said, "That's me. That's Shannon." Okay, I mean, it's clearly a younger version of ourselves, but that is us. And then I was like, "Get out of my house, please, just leave." You think I'm kidding? I kicked her out. And so after she left, I had this moment. I'm like, "Oh God, I need some Botox. Like, I need something to help out with this process." He said, I don't like aging. See, we all worry about things in life, don't we? We worry about small things like aging. We worry about big things. It's just a part of the deal. But I want to give you this thought. Okay? My focus on God dismantles worry in my life. My focus on God dismantles, deconstructs, takes away the worry in my life. As we look through the scriptures, we see this thought threaded through. So if you're taking notes, write that down. As we look at this thought, we could look at so many examples throughout the scriptures, but I want to look at one story with you. It's about a man named Elijah, and Elijah was a prophet in the Old Testament. He was a man of God. He was a man full of confidence and belief in what God could do in his life. He did some incredible things throughout his life, and God showed up in some big ways. And we see him in this moment that I'm about to show you. We see Elijah in this moment where he has this crisis. He faces this opportunity to worry, and we see it in this next verse. 1 Kings chapter 19 and verse 1. When Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah: "May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you." How many of you know that's not a good letter to get? It's not a good email. It's not a good text. You never should get it. That's just a bad message. It's a bad report. So here we have Elijah who's on the other end of this bad news. And he goes out to his mailbox or he checks his email and he opens this letter. And it says, Elijah, you're dead. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take you out. It's over. And we see how Elijah responds here in this next verse 3. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. So Elijah reads this bad report. He gets this bad news and he cries. And cries more. But then he worries. He's so consumed with worry that he literally is full of panic and he runs for his life. Now, what's so interesting about crying babies in auditoriums is that we're so grateful that they have parents who can take them out. It's awesome. What's very interesting about this story is that chapter 19, Elijah, is so different from chapter 18, Elijah of 1 Kings. Chapter 19, Elijah, he gets this bad news, this bad report, okay? He opens this letter and it's like, dude, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to take you out. It's over for you. And he just melts. He's full of worry. He's so worried that he panics, he runs. But chapter 18 is a completely different Elijah. Okay, so let me just set up the story. So in chapter 18 of 1 Kings, there is a drought in the land. The drought is so severe that it hasn't rained for over 3 years. And the crops are dying, people are dying. It's a severe situation. And so what the people know is that Elijah is the last man of God in the land, okay? Because they have literally killed all the other prophets of God. So he's the last guy, and so they're seeking Elijah out for him to somehow ask God, to request God, because he's got a connection to God. So they're going to ask him to ask God to send rain to end the drought. And so they find Elijah, and Elijah agrees to their request on one condition. He says, I'll do what you're asking me to do, but here's what we're going to do first. And literally at this time, there were hundreds and hundreds of false prophets at that time, and one true prophet, Elijah. And so Elijah tells them, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go up to this mountain. At the top of this mountain, you're going to get your 850 false prophets, and they're going to build an altar to their gods, and they're going to pray for God to send fire down to consume the altar and then bring rain on the land to end the drought. And then I'm going to go up the same mountain on this side, and I'm going to build my altar to the one true God, and I'm going to ask God to send fire, consume the altar, and bring rain, and we're going to see who wins. So this is like the first edition of Israel's Got Talent, prophet edition. So they're having a prophet off at the top of this mountain. And so this is what happens. Elijah tells them, he tells these false prophets, he says, here, why don't you guys go first? He's a gentleman. Why don't you give it a shot? All right, and this is what happens. 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 26. So they took the ox he had given them, prepared it for the altar, then prayed to Baal. They prayed all morning long. Oh, Baal, answer us. But nothing happened. Not so much as a whisper of a breeze. Desperate, they jumped and stomped on that altar they had made. By noon, Elijah had started making fun of them, taunting them. So here we have Elijah. Okay, so this is chapter 18 Elijah. All right, he's so full of confidence. He's so full of faith. He's so full of belief in what God can do and what God can provide in his life that he begins taunting these false prophets. And look what he says. He says, hey, call a little louder. He's a God after all, right? Maybe he's off meditating. Or maybe he's gotten involved in a project. Or maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's at Disney. You know, don't suppose he's overslept, do you? They prayed louder and louder. This went on until past noon. They used every religious trick and strategy that they knew to make something happen on that altar, but nothing happened, not so much as a whisper, not a flicker of a response. So here they are. They're doing everything that they can, and Elijah's just watching them do it. And then Elijah steps up, and this is the clutch verse here. Elijah says, enough of all this. It's my turn. Gather around. Enough of all this. Put all your tricks away. You can just stop all this commotion. It's my turn. gather around. And immediately following this, he prays that God would send fire from heaven to consume the altar. And directly following that, he prays for rain, and the rain comes, the drought is ended, prayer is answered, miracle happens, answer provided, done and done. It's an amazing thing. It's miraculous. He's done the absolute impossible. God's done the impossible in this situation. So full of faith, so full of confidence. Yet in just a few verses later, he gets this letter. He gets this bad news, this bad report, and he just melts. And see, here's what we see in this story. My focus on God dismantles the worry in my life. But here's the question, right? How do we focus on God? I mean, what do I do in my life to focus on God? I'm so glad you asked that this morning. Let me give you a few ways to do that. It's like a sequence. It's a 3-part sequence, all right? And the first is this. It starts with the nap. The nap. Can you say this with me? 1, 2, 3, the nap. Yeah, the nap. What am I asking you to do? Am I asking you to go take a nap after church today? No, I'm not. Maybe you should do that. Elijah actually did this in this story. He took a nap, but that's not what I'm talking about. The nap is a technique. The nap is an acronym, and it stands for non-anxious presence. What does that mean? It means literally that when I face a crisis moment in my life, a moment, an opportunity to worry in my life, my initial response is a non-anxious presence. Because what I understand and believe is that my presence affects the people around me. I'll tell you this story just to kind of explain it a little bit. Recently, the Phelps home, we just got a dog 3 months ago. Yeah, and her name is Kashmir, and I think we got some pictures of it. Can you guys say, hey, Kashmir? Yeah, she can't hear you, but she's so cute, you know? And she's like our walking rug, you know, in our house. And my wife and my kids went to get Kashmir on the first day. I brought her home, and they pulled up to our house, and they got little Kashmir out of the car, and they were bringing her up to the house. And my wife, before she got her in the house, unhooked the leash off her collar. And so, by the way, Kashmir is an 18-month-old standard poodle and highly insecure, all right? Which is not a good combination for an owner, all right? And so as soon as my wife took the dog off the leash, she bolts, okay? And it wasn't like a run, hey, come catch me kind of bolt. It was like I'm running for dear life. And she panicked and she ran. And so I'm in the house, I'm watching all this happen out the window, and I see Kashmir run down the road, and then I see my wife in a full-on sprint in heels running after her. And then my kids are right behind my wife, and they're running after her. So I get in the car, and I go driving through my neighborhood trying to find my family, okay, because I've lost them. And I get to this street corner, okay, and literally my kids are on this street corner all alone. And I'm like, you know, I get out of the car, and I find them, and they're just distraught, right? They're just a mess, complete. How many of you have kids? Right? If you had that moment like of pure chaos with your kids, right? And that's what's going on here, and they're just weeping, gnashing their teeth. I mean, it's just a mess. It's a mess. And so I just learned this principle or this technique of having a non-anxious presence. So by the way, if I didn't know about this would be a completely different story, okay? And so as soon as I got out of the car, I huddle my kids up and I say, okay, I'm gonna tap into my non-anxious presence, okay? They're a complete mess, but I'm gonna hold it together, all right? And so as I huddle them up and I say, hey kids, guess what? And then they're saying things like, Daddy, Kashmir doesn't like us. She ran away. She's gonna get hit by a car. She's gonna die. We're never gonna find her again. And I huddled them up. I said, kids, we're gonna find Kashmir. Like, we're going to find her. I bet she's having a blast right now, wherever she is. She's just having so much fun. And then we're going to find her. She's going to we're going to wake up tomorrow and she's going to be on our front doorstep. Like, it's going to be just that simple. It's going to be so good, all right? It's going to be great. And so get in the car and we'll go home. And so I took them home and calmed them down. And my wife came in the door and she's a mess. And she had to call the owner and tell the owner that we had lost the dog as soon as we got home. So she was so embarrassed. And so when my wife comes home, she's stressed and embarrassed and all this stuff. And so I go up to my wife, I say, hey, honey, we're going to find the dog. It's going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. It's going to be just fine. Kashmir's going to be just fine. She's going to be home very, very soon. And you know what I could have done in that moment? When I went to my kids, I could have said, hey, you're probably right. We're not going to find Casimir. See Mike get hit by a dog. I mean, when my wife came into the door, I could have said, why did you take her off the leash? I could have been full of criticism and judgment. But how many of you know that our presence affects the people around us? Our presence affects our children. Our presence affects our spouse. Our presence affects our coworkers. And when we have a non-anxious presence in a very anxious situation, it can change the environment of the space. And see, this is the first step. And when we talk about focusing on God, when we talk about recalibrating our focus and dismantling worry in our lives, it all starts with having a non-anxious presence. The second part of the sequence is we have to lean into our relationship with God. We have to lean into our relationship with God. When we face crisis in our lives, when we face opportunities to worry, we have to lean into our relationship with God. Look at this next verse, Philippians 4:6. The writer says, don't worry about anything. By the way, if you want to know what the scriptures say about worry, it says don't do it. It's just a bad idea. The scriptures are so ahead of their time, all right? And the scriptures know that worry is a gateway drug, to all kinds of bad things. It leads to stress, anxiety, panic. And so the scriptures over and over say, don't worry. But the scriptures also know that the solution to not worrying isn't not worrying. It's something else. And so that's what this is saying here. Don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. Tell God what you need. Thank him for what he's done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can possibly understand. What's the writer saying? When you face those moments in life, don't worry, but instead lean into your relationship with God. Many years ago, Mosaic was a mobile church, and some of you know that, but many of you don't know that because you're kind of new, but we were mobile for many years, and we met in all kinds of different places, and the last place that we met was a school right down the road from here, and the school, the kind of interesting thing about meeting in a school as a church is that they only give you a 3-month contract, like a 3-month lease, and so every 3 months as a staff, we had opportunities to worry, okay, and so one day I got a call out of the blue, and it wasn't a good call. It was a call that kind of went something like this. Hey, Todd, this is the school talking, and you guys, we were getting some complaints about you guys, and some of the teachers are complaining that you're not putting the classes back together, and so we're not renewing your contract. And so after I freaked out just for a minute and went and changed, I got myself together because we having a place to meet as a church is pretty important. It's pretty important. And so this is what we did. We got a map out. We got a map, and we circled an area of Charlotte that we wanted to be in on that map. We didn't know. We had never built a building. We didn't have money to build a building. We were facing a situation that we had no clue how to get through. So we got that map out. We circled the area. And we took it to our staff and said, hey, why don't we pray that God would provide a home for Mosaic? We took it to our board of trustees and we told them what was going on and said, hey, will you join with us and pray that God would provide a home for us? We took it to our leaders and said, would you pray over this map, this area on this map? We don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know what the solution is going to be. We don't have the money to pay for a building, but would you help pray with us? What were we doing? We were leaning into our relationship with God. We were facing a moment that we had no idea how we were going to get through. But instead of freaking out, instead of worrying, we lean into our relationship with God. Third part of the sequence is we have to let it develop. We have to let it develop. I don't know what it is for you. We all have an it today. Might be your kids, might be your job, might be retirement, might be your finances, might be your marriage. I don't know what it is for you, but we all have an it. We all have something that we're concerned about, something that we're worrying about, and we don't know how it's going to work out. But see, we have to let it develop. And see, we live in such an instant culture, don't we? I mean, we want things fast. We want things now. Have any of you seen on Amazon Prime, they have like same day delivery? You guys see? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I love same day. I love same day delivery. It's great. I mean, I don't have time for overnight. I want same day, right? I mean, that is the culture that we live in, right? We're getting things same day. But the problem with that is In God's economy, that's not how it works. God's economy, it doesn't work same day. There's no overnight. It's all a process. It all happens over time. And so I was working on something recently, a project I'm working on, and I was just writing a section of it, and I had this block. I had this writer's block, all right? And so I couldn't get to the next thing. I couldn't get to the next, I didn't have the answer. I didn't have the solution. So I was just frustrated, and so I went to the grocery store. I was walking out of the grocery store, and on the car next to mine, there was a bumper sticker that said, "Let it develop. Let it develop." And I thought, that's it. God just spoke to my spirit in that moment. He said, Todd, you want this thing to happen right now. You want the answer, you want the solution, but here's what I need you to do. I need you to let it develop. I need you to let my faithfulness, my provision develop in your life. Look at this next verse. This is Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 31. If you want to know what Jesus says about worry, you can look up the rest of this chapter 6 in Matthew. It's great stuff. I'll just read a section of this to you. Jesus says this, "So don't worry about these things, saying, what will we eat? What will we drink? What will we wear? Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." And see, Jesus starts out the very same way. He says, don't worry about all these things. I mean, what you will wear and what you will eat and what you will drink, these were the things that were primary concerns for Jesus' audience at the time. And so he says, don't worry about your life, but instead do this. And he has this little phrase here, live righteously. Well, what does that mean, live righteously? What Jesus is saying here is that when he's saying don't worry, he's not abdicating our responsibility in life. So if we're worried about our marriage because we got something going on in our marriage, what Jesus is saying here is live righteously and work on your marriage. Like, give it all you have. If you got something going on with your kids, give everything that you have to solve that thing with your kids. If you got something going on with your job, you got something personally going on with your finances, give everything that you have. Give it 100%. Live righteously. But what he's saying is, after you've given it everything you have, after you've given it 100%, you need to let it develop. And what God was saying to me in that moment, he said, Todd, you've given it everything that you have, but now it's my turn. And what I'm going to do in your life and what I'm going to do in this moment, in this project, isn't going to happen instantly. It's going to happen over time. So you need to trust me, and I trust you to give everything you have. You need to trust me that I'm going to give you everything I have. And so what God is saying to us this morning with this whole let it develop, he's saying this. He's saying after you've given everything you have, you need to let God's provision develop in your life. You need to let his faithfulness develop in your life. You need to let his purpose develop in your life. You need to let his plan develop in your life. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. See, this is what these scriptures are saying to us. When we focus on God, it dismantles the worry in my life. When I lean into my relationship with God, when I have this non-anxious presence, when I trust God so much with whatever area is concerning me, I trust him so much that I'm allowing him to develop his faithfulness in my life. It recalibrates my life. It recalibrates my focus on him. You know what's really interesting about Elijah's story is that in chapter 18, Elijah goes up to this mountain, and he literally faces off with over 800 false prophets. I mean, it's a seemingly impossible situation. How are you going to pray and instantly fire is going to come from heaven? A drought that was happening for over 3 years, you're going to pray and you believe God is going to send rain and end a drought? And yet he was so bold. He was so full of faith, so full of confidence. And yet in chapter 19, he gets a letter. Isn't that weird? He just got a letter. I guess Jezebel was a pretty big deal at that time. I'm sure she was. But he gets a letter. It's not good news, but it's a bad report. It's bad news. And he opens this letter, and he reads the letter, and he just melts. He falls apart. In chapter 18, he's full of faith. Chapter 19, he just gets a letter, and he loses his faith. I'm like, why did that happen? I think it is to just show us how much we're like Elijah. You know, there's some things that we believe God is going to provide in our life so much, isn't it? Isn't it true? We just believe that God's going to be faithful. He's going to provide. He's going to answer this prayer. But there are other things in our life that we're not so sure about. And when we face those things, whatever that is for you, you just melt. You're not quite sure if God is going to show up in your life. I'm going to ask you this question this morning. What is it for you? What is it for you? What is that thing? What is that worry in your life? Is it with your kids? Is it with your health? Is it with your future? Is it with your marriage? What is it for you that you're facing today? And I'm going to ask you this morning. Would you be so bold this morning to say, God, this is it. This is my concern. This is my worry. I'm just giving it to you. I'm going to allow you to do what only you can do. I'm going to just allow your faithfulness to develop in my life. I'm going to allow your provision to develop in my life in this particular area. God, today is a defining moment in my life. I'm recalibrating my focus on you. I've got my sights set on you. My faith is growing in this area. Would you be so bold to do that this morning? We're going to move into a time of response as we sing this next song. And we have a cross on your left-hand side. That cross was so full last service. We took them all down. We should have left them up. But that cross was full of prayers, of people saying, God, I'm giving it to you. I'm going to lean into my relationship with you on this. My faith is going up. I'm gonna allow your faithfulness to develop in this area. Would you go to the cross today? If that cross is empty today, I haven't done my job. Would you go to the cross this morning during this response time and say, God, this is it. This is it. I'm giving it to you. Maybe some of you, you have a friend, you have a family member that's worried about something. You want to pray for them as you go and light a candle for them, as you pray in faith for them, for that situation, as you join your faith with their faith. Some of us need to take communion this morning. As you go and take communion, you take that bread that represents the body of Jesus that was broken for you. You dip it in the juice that represents the blood of Jesus that was shed for you. You just be reminded that God spared no expense. He spared no expense when it came to you, giving you a new life, giving you a second chance. We have our ministry team on the left-hand side if you have something we can pray for you about. Let me pray for us as we continue. God, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for this moment. God, would you stir our faith in this place? Would you stir our faith, God? Would you help us lean into our relationship with you? Would you help us make today a defining moment, a defining morning that we say, God, I give it all to you. I give you my future. I give you my job. I give you my worry. I give you my finances. I give you my retirement. I give you my kids. God, it's yours. I need you, God. I'm desperate for you, God. Would you show up in my life like never before? Mosaic, would you stand together as we sing this song?